Hi, I'm Allison Snyder. I'm a managing editor at Axios. Thank you all for being here today. Thanks to you in the room, but also next door in our overflow space. Hi. And so we have a really exciting lineup of guests today to look at how climate tech is, companies and the industry as a whole is evolving to try to reach net zero goals. So we're going to get started straight away. But if you're on social media, make sure to follow along with us. Everything we say here, you're welcome to post it. And please use the hashtag Axios events. So let's get straight to it. I'm very excited to welcome our first guest, who has given me approval for saying his name like this, Jan Wurzbacher. Please come on up. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jan is the co-founder and co-CEO of climworks, which is a company that's developing a technology, a direct air capture technology, which basically removes carbon from the air. So my first question is, really? How does that go?
Yeah, thanks for welcoming us here. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. So yes, the good thing about our company, Climworks, is that we can say what we are doing in a very tangible way within one sentence. So we are building technical plans that capture CO2 out of ambient air, and then we're handing that over to our partners who permanently store it underground for millions of years. The best example of that is our plant in Iceland. That's called the Orca plant that we've built there in 2021, and that is operational as we speak. It's been in operation for more than 2 years now, and that's taking, so that has a nameplate capacity of 4,000 tons of CO2 that can be captured from the atmosphere every year. We're then working together with our Icelandic partners who are injecting that CO2 underground into basalt rock. That's the volcanic rock where the CO2 is actually mineralizing with these rocks, and within 2 years it's turned into stone hundreds of meters underground. So that's a really permanent way of removing CO2. And then we are selling the certificates for this removal to our customers. Currently, well, a lot of big names in particular from the finance or from the consulting industry, JP Morgan, BCG, other players from the banking industry are example customers. Microsoft has been a very early player. So typically companies who've set themselves very ambitious carbon removal targets and net zero targets, who figured out they cannot address all their emissions by mitigation, but they have to do something about removing CO2 permanently from the atmosphere.
I want to go back to the question of why in a second, but my next question is, so sounds like relatively straightforward technology, but the issue is scaling it. So where does it sort of stand now? Climworks, or even just more broadly, how much is being done, and then sort of what's needed?
Yeah, no, that is really the key point, and the most asked question to us is how can we scale this? So we are now doing this at a thousands of ton scale. We have another plant in commissioning right now in Iceland, which is 10 times larger. So then we are speaking tens of thousands of tons, but eventually we have to go to millions and then billions of tons of carbon removal. So if we look at climate science, the need for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by mid-century, so by 2050, is at the order of several gigatons, if not more than 10 gigatons per year. So that's the eventual scale we need to go. If we break it down a little bit for us as a company, for our deployment, by the end of this decade, we'll be at a multi-million tons per year scale. And that's the big challenge. One big challenge is really, it's not only about technology development. So you said, really, is that something that's doable? In principle, building technology that takes CO2 out of air, even if the CO2 is at a very low concentration, that's not difficult. And that's been done by people tens of years ago, 50 years ago. If you think of submarines, where people exhale CO2, you have to capture CO2 from the air. If you think of the space station, people exhale CO2, you have to capture it from the air. Some of you might have seen Apollo 13, the movie, or there are movies where there was problems with CO2. So it's a known topic, but making that at scale with the target of removing millions of tons from the atmosphere, not removing certain kilograms from a confined space. That is the challenge, and the big challenge is doing it really out there in the field. Now, there is a lot of technology coming up. Many companies have developed stuff in the lab, where we, from the side of Climworks, feel that we've been leading by example, we've been paving the way, is really from the beginning, going out there in the field, putting plants out there and suffering. You might all know the story from Tesla going through production hell. We've had a similar production hell, or say capturing hell. When we first installed our plant in Iceland, we figured out, ooh, it's really tough, freezing, snow, ice, rusting, corrosive atmosphere, so all these things can go wrong. And you have to incorporate that all into your design, and you have to be quick. So if you want to scale from thousands of tons to millions of tons, we're very soon talking multi-billion investments into single projects, and you'd rather have de-risk your technology. So going out there, learning, failing, making it better in very short cycles, that's the biggest challenge, and that's what's our daily bread and butter at Climworks, if you like.
Much more broadly in terms of climate change mitigation, like the calculus is sort of, for every dollar spent, how much carbon is removed? So I guess my question is, how much is it right now for a gigaton of carbon through direct air capture?
Yeah, that's the magic number, the dollars per ton value. So to say, I think if we start from the end, where we believe, I mean, many people for several years have claimed a magic number of $100 per ton CO2 captured. I'm not sure if it has to go that low. We currently rather think kind of the two curves in terms of willingness to pay and price point might rather intersect at the point of around somewhere between $100 and $200 dollars per ton. So that's kind of the end game where we're heading to. If you go on the website climworks.com today, to give you a price point of today, you can actually buy carbon removal for you as a private individual. Christmas is over, but has been a nice idea for Christmas presents. So then the price point where we're selling to individuals is at a range of $1,000 per ton.
Okay.
That's not the volume sales price, but that gives you an order of magnitude where we're standing today. And even the very first plants are not profitable with that. But it's also not like if you're doing it at a few thousands tons per year, that's not really relevant for the price tag. But let's say, to put it again from the end, if we want to go to $100 to $200 in the end, we believe that by the end of this decade, $300 per ton CO2 captured, that's something that's in range, and we need to do a 2 to 3x cost reduction by then. So that's the key target for the rest of the decade. Scaling up, we will change from our current generation to next generation technology, and so there'll be a 2 times a factor of 1.5 to 2 where we can reduce cost. That's a similar ballpark as others in the industry see it. Some people who've not gone through the pain as we've gone through Iceland are probably a bit more optimistic. Others who've done it are less, but it's really about getting down this curve. So yes, today it is an expensive solution. If you go out there and say, I want to buy certificates from Climworks, I want to buy capacity from your plants, you'll pay much more. You might be paying 10 times more or even more compared to buying certificates for an afforestation project. But then the quality is also a very different one, right? First, the scale is different, and what it really costs today at a few thousand tons per year is not so relevant for, like, the important question is, how much does it cost by 2035 when you're capturing tens of millions of tons? And then when you are there, you have something which is really, really permanent. And so that's why many people, many companies look at it as a portfolio. So there are some solutions which are cheaper now, which are at larger scale, but might not be scalable more going forward. But they can do something now, and then others need to scale up first, but then can be much cheaper going forward. And those are then the technical solutions such as we are developing them.
So the technology has like some skeptics, let's say. And so on the one hand, you have the IPCC that says, yes, we absolutely need some sort of carbon removal to reach net zero. But you also have the UN saying, well, hold on a second. There was a briefing note that was sort of like, this is unproven, this is economically unproven. But you're signing on a lot of customers. So who do you need to win over? That's, I guess, who do you need to get on board?
Well, I mean, first thing to say is, like, I think the debate whether there is an easy way to prove this at scale, or whether we should rather do this or rather plant more trees and do other stuff, that was a good debate 20 years ago. But right now we are just like, we're too late. We just had the Copernicus report saying we are, with 2023 as the hottest year ever, at a global average temperature 1.48 degree above pre-industrial. So we are very, very short, like razor sharp gap between the 1.5 degree goal and where we're today. So there's just no time. So that's the first statement. Who do we have to win? Currently, a lot of corporates have understood that, and they have understood that going forward, those solutions will be scalable, and they are trying to get their foot in the door, and they will not be able to afford meeting all of their reduction targets with technologies such as ours. Also, the capacity is just not available, but they understand we need to invest there now to get this cheaper quickly. This technology will scale, and it will get cheaper. That's no question. The question is, can we do it in 5 years, or does it take 10 years? So the corporate world somehow has understood that and is on board, and we need to convince more, and we need to, like, as we scale our plans, we are scaling our sales. That is going quite well currently, but of course there are also other constraints right now in the economy. So we need to convince people that they need to invest in the long term. The other type of parties we need to convince is the public sector. So thinking about when will there be a switch between the voluntary carbon market, that is the play field we are most active on now, and the compliance market. And kind of my very simple way of saying is we can go to millions of tons, even to tens of millions of tons on the voluntary market, but if you want to go from tens of millions of tons to billions of tons, we do need the compliance markets. And there are things happening in the US. We have regulations like 45Q who can pay in, but we need more of that, and we need offtake contracts from countries. We need contracts in between countries. Article 6 discussions is just one keyword. So that is what needs to happen to accelerate what we are currently working on.
We're almost out of time, so we'd like to end on one fun thing. And we've been asking one fun Davos thing, but you live in Zurich. You've told me you were in Switzerland for 20 years. For those of us going back through Zurich, what is the one thing we should do?
Well, in the summer, I would say you should take a boat and have a nice trip on the lake. But if the weather is fine, you should still do that. That's
really?
Very nice.
Now?
Yes.
Oh.
But it'll be cold.
No, it's very cold. But it operates?
Yes. Yeah, it should.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And up next is our publisher, Nick Johnston.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, all of you, for being here. This is an exciting day 2 of Axios House in Davos. I don't think the exhaustion has set in yet. Still plowing through on adrenaline. We have a packed week of events here. Make sure to check us out online. Grab me after this event. Grab any of our event staff. We can tell you what else we have planned for this exciting week. And of course, nothing we do here in Davos would be possible without our partners who make all this possible. So this morning, a huge thanks to U.S. Steel Corporation for making this conversation possible. And welcome to the stage for a view from the top conversation, U.S. Steel's Head of Sustainability, Erica Chan. Welcome aboard. Thanks for coming, Axios House. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, Nick, and Axios House. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation because I know everyone wants to talk about steel, right? Right? And before we jump into questions, I just wanted to take a poll in the audience. Okay, so how many of you own a car? Few. Okay, keep your hands up, all right? Okay, how many of you own a refrigerator? Washing machine, dryer, all right? We're gonna go down to smaller appliances. How many of you cook? KitchenAid. All right,
I think we're out of hands.
All right. I think I've got the whole room, right? Unless some of you are living off-grid completely, which is pretty cool also. But so as you can see, Nick, steel is essential to modern life, right? It's part of the fabric of our society from history onwards to now, and enabling a greener economy. And because steel is so essential to modern life, it's important that we reduce emissions in meaningful ways. The steel and cement industry are responsible for significant global greenhouse gas emissions, and according to a DOE reports, the Carbon Management Market Liftoff Report, the U.S. alone needs to capture 400 to 1,800 million tons of CO2 annually if it's going to meet its 2050 goals and decarbonization goals. And we have our own ambitions to achieve net zero by 2050. And one of the ways that we're working towards that is by partnering with the U.S. Department of Energy's NETL, and we're testing this membrane carbon capture technology to reduce emissions at one of our integrated mills, Edgar Thomson, in the Pennsylvania area.
We almost covered the whole thing here. I can just step outside and get a croissant. Hold on. Let's go a little bit deeper on it. Let's start, let's stay big picture and talk about, what's the business case for this? We've understood here sort of the need for these kinds of changes, but how does a company approach making those kinds of massive investments
Yeah,
that are
required. A lot of it, I think, is driven by customer demand, right? We're increasingly hearing from customers that they want more sustainable products, they want steel with lower emissions. And so what we're doing around that is we have introduced a product line in Arkansas recently. It's called non-grain oriented steel, and it actually transforms electrical power into energy usage. So you think of electric vehicles, transformers, power generators as such. This type of steel is innovative, and it's actually kind of interesting because if you think about steel, you probably think of like big beams or big pieces of metal. This NGO steel is so thin, it's like thinner than cardboard. And it's pretty amazing because if you think about what it will do for electric vehicles, it'll increase the efficiency and the range of cars.
And part of that, I think what you touched on is making it a consumer choice. It's not a company deciding to do a thing. It's serving actually a business need because that's what the consumers are asking the companies to do. Let's expand it a little bit. I think so many of the conversations that we have about sustainability are about not doing it alone. Right? There are things that U.S. Steel can do as a corporation, but there are business partners, consumers, government agencies. Tell me a little bit about the collaboration. Who are the partners you're looking for, who you work with on that?
So, making steel truly sustainable is incredibly important for the global economy, but it's also incredibly difficult, and we definitely cannot do this alone, right? I don't think any company can do this alone. So our ecosystem of collaborators is really wide-ranging. We've got academia, we've got technology companies, we've got governmental agencies, including suppliers, distribution partners, all across our entire value chain, including our customers. And we do a number of different things, and I'll give you some examples. So one of them is with the U.S. Department of Energy funding. It was recently announced that, led by a company called GTI Energy, they have an innovative carbon capture process. It's utilizing modular carbon capture systems, so it actually intensifies the carbon capture process, and it reduces the size and cost of carbon capture in industrial settings. So as you can imagine, we have quite a few examples and areas where we can apply this technology. We're also doing things like partnering with utility providers. So in Arkansas, we have a good partnership with Entergy, and they're actually building a 250 megawatt driver solar plant immediately adjacent to our facility, and we will be the recipient of 100% of that renewable energy. In addition, they're looking for other means to help us reduce our scope.
It's kind of like digging in all across the supply and energy chain. Like at each of those places, there's an opportunity to do things that are in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really micro. If you step back and look at the macro environment, we are members of Responsible Steel, and it's the industry's first organization that has buyers and producers that are working towards certifications and standards in the steel industry.
So one thing I love about doing these events in Davos, when we have an event on a specific topic, you get the true experts in the room, and they're very important people, or at least think they're very important when it comes to this. So when they go back to their home companies, their home countries, what's the takeaway that they should take with them? What's a message that you hope they hear from these kinds of conversations?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, we're a 120-year-old company, almost 122 years, and we are in the midst of transformation, and we are very much dedicated to sustainability. And our CEO likes to say, this isn't your grandpappy's steel company anymore. We're truly embracing technology, from predictive analytics to AI, and we are more and more becoming a technology company that just happens to make steel. We're good at making steel as well.
Well, this would not be a Davos panel if we didn't talk about AI. So let's go. Let's talk about AI.
I know. Look, there's AI across the street there.
Give us some examples, or tell me how you're using these advanced technologies for these types of goals.
Yeah, so we are partnering with Google Cloud and using generative AI to improve efficiencies from an operational perspective, but as well as improve the experience for our workers in the largest iron ore in North America, which we happen to own in the Minnesota region. So that's one example that we're using AI.
How transformative is that? So many of the conversations that we have here about the speed of change that is doing. Have you started to see that even in a traditional industrial spot like U.S. Steel, or give us a sense of what the feel is like?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any technology that's adapted, you see the change overnight, right? It takes time, and also it takes people becoming used to working with generative AI. So yeah, we're definitely seeing improvements, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time for us to really understand the true impacts. But we're really hopeful that we'll be able to leverage this technology to grow our efficiencies across
It's
the
a
company.
long journey for not your grandpappy's steel company. to start using
Exactly,
generative
exactly.
AI.
We were not a startup that happened to launch 5 years ago. 122 years of operations.
All right. So before we get the hook here, I also want to end on one fun thing, one Davos thing. This is your first trip to
Yes, sir.
Davos. What's the reaction so far? What's exciting? What seems weird? What are you excited to do next?
Well, all of the above. No, it's interesting. Safety first is part of our core foundation, is part of our steel principles. So we lead with safety. So I did get some awesome crampons to go with my boots. And being a Texas gal, I really have no need for either of those things. But they've served me well here. So safety first.
Yeah, I was hoping those aren't the shoes you wear.
No.
Outside. This was
No,
a big
they're-
debate we had last year about whether you wear your hiking shoes all the time or you swap in and out. I see what school
I did
you're
swap
in.
them out, but on all seriousness, I'm really excited about being here for the first time. It's so inspiring to hear from people working really hard, tackling big issues, including climate change and equality. And so I'm looking forward to more engagement.
Stick around for snacks and drinks afterwards. Erica, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to US Steel for making today possible. And we have one more follow-up conversation. I want to welcome to the stage Neela Budhu, who's the host of One Big Thing.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Neela Budhu. I host our Axios podcast, One Big Thing, which is a weekly interview show. And this week is going to be Davos Focus. So we come out every Thursday morning. We publish at 5 a.m. Eastern Time, New York time. So please tune in, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I feel like we have two shoe diverse people coming up again because we represent all shoe factions here at Davos. These are my outside shoes. My next guest, Microsoft's Vice President and Chief Data Scientist of the AI for Good Lab, is coming up here with his dress shoes. Thank you. Juan Livista Perez. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you for being
invitation.
here. Welcome to Axios House.
Thank you.
So, of course, I'm going to ask you an AI question to start here. But I wanted to, AI for Good, let's just talk a little bit about that in particular, how you're using AI when we're talking about sustainability efforts right now for Microsoft.
Yeah, so I run AI for Good Lab. That is our AI for Good efforts across Microsoft. And one of the biggest pillars for us is sustainability. And within sustainability, we have like very different areas. One area that we use, that we have been working a lot, is in monitoring rainforests. So we have this project in the Amazon. It's called Guacamaya. And it's a collaboration between us, the University of Los Andes in Colombia, and a few organizations, a few nonprofit organizations in Colombia, with the support of the Colombian government. And what we do is we use satellite data to monitor and understand illegal logging, also to use the same technology to detect illegal mining, and that's like from the satellite. Then inside the Amazon, we have two different technologies also using AI. The first one is camera traps. Camera traps is these cameras that researchers leave in the Amazon or in many other areas. The only thing that they do is just take pictures. Any movement, they just continue taking pictures. And we use AI to analyze that data, because otherwise it would take researchers years to just go through these pictures. What AI does is understand whether that picture belongs to an animal and exactly what animal it is. And this helps researchers understand migration, understand counting, understand many of the problems. And the third area is acoustic data. So similar devices, but they have recordings, and they just continue recording information, recording sounds across the Amazon. And this could be a sound of a particular bulldozer, or this could be a sound from a particular species. You use AI to classify also that information.
Where does that go? Where does that data go, that information?
It usually goes to researchers. So it's shared with researchers. It's shared, like they basically understand how is the health of the Amazon based on camera traps, based on acoustic data. Mm-hmm. So that's one part of basically on the monitoring side. We are also launching here, we are actually finishing the project, and we're going to be announcing here, is what is called the Global Renewal Watch, that is using also satellite data. That's an an area that we have a lot of investment because we see a lot of value. This is a very strong collaboration with Planet. And what we do is we use satellite data to measure and count every single wind farm and solar farm across the world. We know that the only way we can do to help on climate in many ways is to reduce emissions. That's something that is critical. And in order to reduce emissions, we need to move as fast as possible away from fossil fuels. And so the renewal aspect plays a fundamental role there, and understand and measure, like the Global Renewal Watch, we can measure how many solar farms and wind farms we have, and we can measure actually across the world, and we can do this every 3 months or even every month to understand progress towards that across countries, across the entire world, basically.
We know that the Global South has been disproportionately affected by climate change. How do you think projects like that, other AI, can help factor into leveling or evening out this playing field?
So the Global South has, we also have one of the biggest components we have. This is something that we are doing with organizations like the World Food Program or other UN agencies. A fundamental question for us is understand where people live. And if you live in the US or if you live in Europe, you can go online and you can see your house from above, like using satellite data. And those pictures are usually up to date, maybe 1 year old. So all of us have the illusion that we know where people live. And that's an illusion because in the countries where they don't have a market for selling satellite pictures, usually those satellites are not tasked. So one project we're doing, this is a collaboration with the Institute of Health Metrics from University of Washington and also Planet, is to map every single building across the world. Because this information is fundamental, whether there is a natural disaster, where you want to prepare for a disaster, whether you even want to understand how, like logistics and understand services, you need to understand how many people live and where do people live. So that's a project we have, and that's our that's one of the main investments we have in the Global South, to try to have like share all the data with all the organizations that are working there.
I think there are people who have a lot of skepticism around AI and also how it can help. What would you say to sort of level set or reality check people's expectations here, particularly when it comes to climate and sustainability?
So there are problems that we can only solve through AI, and that's something that we have seen in the case of sustainability.
Sorry, there are problems, or okay.
There are problems we can only solve through AI. For example, I was talking just about monitoring the forest and monitoring for illegal mining. Some of these problems, like you would take a human 100 years just to go through one, just like if you have just pictures of every single forest and you want to monitor through these, a person would take roughly a bit more than 100 years just to go for one day. And we have data every single day. Like where you're monitoring, like one of the best predictors of illegal logging is new roads. It would be impossible for humans, unless like you have 100,000 humans just working on that, where every day they look for these. And you can use AI, and within an hour, you can analyze all the forests and analyze whether there's any indication of new roads that will likely be predictive of illegal logging in the future. So yes, there are problems that I'm very optimistic because AI is not going to solve all these problems, but there are problems we're solving with AI that what before was impossible to solve.
So where do you think what are the biggest headwinds you think you have faced, particularly in your work, when it comes to sustainability?
Usually one of the biggest challenges is that there is not enough data. And is it
the quality of data also, or just that not enough data?
There's quality of data, there's existence of data. So data, in order for us to work and to have an impact from an AI perspective, we need data. And the biggest challenge is there is inequities on data, also inequities in the Global South. Like if you've ever seen like a map where weather stations are in the world, it looks a lot like a very disproportionate map. And that's the same across many other areas. That's a place where technology like satellite data can make a big difference because now suddenly you have pictures across the world. But even then, like we know that very high resolution satellite data is you have it when satellites are tasked. And that's why for us, working with Planet has been a game changer, because they do take a picture every day for every single pixel. Every single meter in the world has pictures every day. They have 200 satellites taking pictures. And that's a game changer, because suddenly those inequities are solved. But yeah, data is usually one of the biggest challenge we have. Like the existence of data, the quality of the data, access to data.
So your AI for Good lab is about 5 years old?
Yeah.
So can you share something that you've learned during that time that has really either stopped you in your tracks or changed how you approach your work?
I think that like the game changer for me was, again, this is outside sustainability, but it's in health.
That's okay.
We were working on diabetic retinopathy. And diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of blindness around the world. You have 500 million people that suffer from diabetes, and a portion of them will develop diabetic retinopathy, and if they are not treated, they will become blind. And that's the working age population. Like every year, hundreds of thousands or even of people will become blind because of that. And it's completely preventable. But the biggest challenge is you only have 200,000 ophthalmologists in the world. And you have 500 million people that suffer from diabetes. It's physically impossible for these ophthalmologists to even diagnose diabetic retinopathy. And once we build models that we can solve this, you realize that there is a lot of power, and that's how I became like, let's say, hey, we can actually have a great impact using technology for many of these problems.
So I understand that you are Microsoft's resident optimist. That's another title that you have. What keeps you going? Like, what keeps you so optimistic? Especially given that you're working in the climate change area.
I think in general, like on average, humans want to do the best things we can, either for the planet or for society. And even when sometimes things go wrong, in general, there is still a disproportionate amount of people that want to help and want to see a better world. And either through technology or through their help, like working with nonprofits, like majority of the work we do is we work with nonprofits. And like as soon as you work with these people that are dedicating their life to make a better living for the rest of people, like you certainly become much more optimistic. So.
Okay, and so before we go, I got a sneak copy of this. This is only for Davos pre-publication. Can you tell this is coming out in March? Can you tell me a little bit about
This is coming out in March.
Okay.
This is our book that...
This is your book.
Yes,
Okay.
it's the book from my lab. Like I happen to be... so the book is about, it actually tells a little bit about AI, a little bit about our work, but more important, it has roughly 31 chapters, and each chapter is one use case of AI on how we, like our lab, collaborated with other organizations and other subject matter experts. Something that is really important and is very well described in the book is that as data scientists, the biggest mistake we can ever do is just to try to solve a problem by ourselves. Like, it's very clear, and that has been a very big important lesson learned. In order for us to solve a problem, we need to partner with subject matter experts. And those subject matter experts are co-authors in this book, are co-authors in these chapters, and they're amazing individuals. And the work they do is amazing. Either it's from pancreatic cancer or trying to measure like giraffes in Serengeti, or like what you will see here is a huge diversity of problems. And the reason why this diversity of problems is because underneath, like, there's very different problems of trying to understand pancreatic cancer or trying to find a solar farm. Like, but from a data science, from an AI perspective, those problems are really similar. So what you will see is a huge diversity of problems, and like hopefully you will see the huge power of AI.
Oh, well, thank you, Juan Luis Flores. That's all the time we have. I want to thank you for being with us, and I want to thank all of you for being here with us too, especially our folks next door in Overflow. Please join us later today. We have 2 more events, including speakers from Google, DeepMind, MasterCard, and more. And we've got lots more exciting events for the week, so please make sure you register before you leave today. Join us, come early, as you have seen. And please stick around for some more networking. We'd love to get to know you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.